The Rosenbergs. Atomic spies or victims of hysteria. This is a deeply complex and tragic story, a climactic drama of espionage, politics, and family tragedy at the height of the Cold War. With a running time of 45 minutes divided into 3 parts, we will have enough space to delve into every hidden corner of this historic case. Part 1. The Shadow of the Bomb. In 1945, the United States became the only country on the planet to possess a weapon of godlike power, the atomic bomb. This weapon ended World War II and gave America a sense of absolute power. Leading scientists estimated that it would take the Soviet Union at least a decade, if not more, to build a similar bomb. But then, on August 29, 1949, the world was stunned. The Soviet Union successfully detonated its first atomic bomb years earlier than expected. America's nuclear monopoly was shattered. The feeling of absolute security turned to utter fear. The question was no longer if the Soviets had the bomb, but how did they get it so quickly? And the only answer America could accept was one word: espionage. The greatest manhunt in American history began. A hunt not only for the traitor, but also sparked a period of hysteria, suspicion, and fear known as the Red Scare. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Journey Through History. Our story today is a domino effect, where a confession in England led to a death sentence on the electric chair in America. Everything started with the first domino, Dr. Klaus Fuchs. Fuchs is a brilliant German theoretical physicist who fled Nazi Germany and worked for the British atomic bomb project. He also worked at the top-secret Los Alamos laboratory in New Mexico, where the American bomb was made. In 1950, British intelligence arrested Fuchs, and he confessed a shocking truth. For many years, he had leaked the most important nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union. Fuchs's confession started a chain reaction. FBI followed his trail and found the second domino, Harry Gold, an American chemist who served as a messenger for Fuchs. Arrested and facing a heavy sentence, Harry Gold did not remain silent. He revealed another lead, a young soldier who had worked as a mechanic at the Los Alamos laboratory, someone who had provided Gold with detailed drawings of the bomb's operating mechanism. The third domino piece has been identified: David Greenglass. Greenglass, a young soldier, is not a brilliant scientist, but he worked in a strategic position and had access to sensitive information. When the FBI arrived, Greenglass panicked and quickly confessed. But to save himself and his wife, Ruth, who was also involved in the case, David Greenglass gave the FBI a much bigger name, a name that the FBI did not expect. He revealed the person who recruited him into the spy network. That person was his brother-in-law. And the last domino piece has been revealed: Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. An ordinary Jewish couple living in a modest apartment in the Lower East Side of New York, along with their 2 young sons. Julius was an electrical engineer, and Ethel was a housewife. But hidden behind that ordinary appearance, they were loyal communists who believed that the Soviet Union was the future of the world and America was an imperialist power. They believed that the Soviet Union, also having an atomic bomb, would create a balance of power, preventing America from using that weapon again. On July 17, 1950, the FBI arrested Julius Rosenberg. A month later, they returned and arrested Ethel. The charge: conspiracy to commit espionage to steal atomic bomb secrets for the Soviet Union. The domino effect stopped. The hunt was over, and the stage has been set for one of the most controversial trials in American history. A trial that will decide the fate not only of a couple, but also of an entire era. Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of the Rosenberg story. In March 1951, the trial of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg began in New York. The atmosphere outside the courthouse was tense. America was in the midst of the Korean War, and anti-communist sentiment, known as the Red Scare, was at its height. To the public, this was more than just a criminal trial. It was a trial of treason. Inside the courtroom, facing the Rosenbergs, was a formidable prosecution team, led by District Attorney Irving Sapol, and presided over by Judge Irving Kaufman, both hardline anti-communists. And throughout the trial, the two most important witnesses, the two people who held the key to the case, were David Greenglass and his wife, Ruth. Ethel Rosenberg's brother and sister-in-law. David Greenglass, under a cooperation agreement in exchange for a lighter sentence, took the stand and told his story. He described in detail how Julius had recruited him, convincing him that sharing nuclear secrets with the Soviet Union, an ally of the United States during World War II, was the right thing to do to balance the world. David provided the court with rudimentary drawings that he had drawn from memory of the atomic bomb's implosion lens mechanism, a key technical detail. He said he had given these drawings to Julius. David's testimony nailed Julius Rosenberg. It showed that Julius was not only a communist, but also a conspirator, actively trying to steal the nation's military secrets. But what about Ethel? What was her role? This is when Ruth Greenglass, David's wife, made her fateful statement. This statement, later revealed to be a lie, directly sent Ethel to the electric chair. Ruth testified that she and David had gone to the Rosenbergs' apartment to deliver the documents. And there, Ethel Rosenberg herself sat at a typewriter and typed David's handwritten notes about the bomb secrets. This typing detail was crucial. It transformed Ethel from a wife who might have been passively aware of her husband's activities to an active participant, a secretary, an accomplice in the spy network. It showed that she not only knew, but helped. Meanwhile, on the other side, what did the Rosenbergs do to defend themselves? They did something that was legally within their rights, but in terms of their public image, a disaster. When asked if they were members of the Communist Party, they invoked the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, refusing to answer a question that could incriminate them. In the anti-communist hysteria of the time, this was tantamount to a confession to the jury. They denied all charges of espionage, but they could not provide a convincing explanation for the evidence presented by the prosecution. Their defense was considered weak and unreliable. In his closing arguments, prosecutor Sapol painted a lurid picture. He said the Rosenbergs' crimes were worse than murder. He accused them of giving the secrets of the bomb to the Soviets, and thus directly causing the Korean War and the deaths of more than 50 American soldiers. After a brief deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty. Both Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were found guilty of conspiracy to commit espionage. The courtroom was silent. The question now was not whether they were guilty, but what their punishment would be. All eyes turned to Judge Irving Kaufman, who would decide their fate. Part 3. The Price of Silence. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the final part of the Rosenberg story. They had been found guilty. Now, they faced sentencing. On April 5, 1951, Judge Irving Kaufman read his verdict. His words were not just a legal judgment, but a historic indictment. He said that their crimes had brought about the communist offensive in Korea, and that they were therefore responsible for tens of thousands of deaths. And then, he delivered the verdict. A verdict that stunned the world. For conspiracy to commit espionage in peacetime, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were sentenced to death by electric chair. The verdict caused a global outcry. The death penalty for espionage in peacetime was unprecedented in the United States. Many, even those who believed Julius was guilty, felt the sentence was too harsh, especially for Ethel, whose role seemed so small. An international movement to pardon the Rosenbergs erupted. Mass protests took place in Paris, London, Rome. Prominent figures such as scientist Albert Einstein, artist Pablo Picasso, and Pope Pius XII all called for clemency. During the 2 years they waited for their sentence to be carried out at Sing Sing prison, the Rosenbergs remained steadfastly silent. The US government repeatedly offered them a deal: confess, name other spies, and the death sentence would be dropped. They believed that Ethel was the key. They believed that if faced with death, she would break down and convince her husband to cooperate. They used their mother's life as leverage, but the Rosenbergs did not break down. They chose to die together rather than betray their ideals or implicate others. Their final letters to their two young sons were touching, affirming their love and innocence. They believed that history would judge them fairly. June 19, 1953. Execution Day. At Sing Sing prison, Julius Rosenberg was the first to enter the execution chamber. He died after the first shocks. Then it was Ethel's turn, but the tragedy was not over. After 3 shocks, her heart was still beating. The executioners had to give her 2 more shocks before she was pronounced dead. They were the only Americans executed for espionage during the entire Cold War. The case was closed, but the story was not. Decades later, as the Iron Curtain fell and secret documents were declassified, a more complex picture emerged. Project Venona. The deciphered Soviet radio codes confirmed one thing: Julius Rosenberg was indeed a spy, and the head of an active network. But the same documents also showed that Ethel's role was extremely ambiguous. She almost certainly knew about her husband's activities, but there was no evidence that she was an active participant or a key spy. And then the bomb went off. Decades later, David Greenglass, Ethel's brother, confessed in an interview that he had lied on the witness stand. He couldn't remember who had typed the notes, and he admitted that the prosecution had encouraged him to frame his sister more harshly to ensure a conviction and the death penalty for both of them. So, back to the original question. Were the Rosenbergs atomic spies or victims of hysteria? The answer, like history, is not simple. Julius was a spy. That's true. But what about Ethel? Was she a spy, or simply a loyal wife and mother, held hostage by the government to extract a confession from her husband? And even if they were guilty, did they deserve to die? Or were they scapegoats for a nation terrified of losing its nuclear monopoly? A government determined to punish someone severely enough to deter them? Theirs is not a simple story of spies and patriots. It is a tragedy of ideals, of family betrayal, and of a justice system bent by the political winds of the times. A story that reminds us that the line between justice and revenge can sometimes be frighteningly thin. Thank you for following this complex story. Goodbye, and see you again in the next History Trail.